Welcome to Pearl Magazine. Hong Kong is toasting a gradual relaxation of social distancing measures in restaurants. As it turns out, Hong Kong residents are a thirsty bunch. Close to half of the alcoholic beverages we consume is beer, most of it imported. But since 2008, when beer and wine taxes were dropped, demand for higher quality craft beer has taken off. Small importers have begun sourcing beers directly from brewers, selling them online or through restaurants and bars. Others are making their own beer. Pearl Magazine's Tina Jiang decided to find out what's brewing. Inside an industrial building in Kwun Tong, it's brew day at a craft brewery.
Currently we're going through the mashing process. That's where you introduce the malt into the water. It activates the enzymes and starts to convert the starch in the malt into sugar.
Srivas is the head brewer here. The beer he's been making today is a single batch tea lager.
I've been quite fascinated with tea as an ingredient the last few months. We'll be doing a rice lager infused with 3 different kinds of teas. Today specifically we'll only be using one tea, which is a black tea. And then during the fermentation and the cold side of the brewing, I'll be adding in 2 additional teas.
Beer has just 4 basic ingredients: water, malted grain, hops, and yeast. But it comes in an infinite range of flavors and aromas.
There's always new ingredients, there's always new processes or new styles of beer. In the last 5 years, there's probably been 10 to 20 new styles of beer that popped up. People are even putting tree branches in their beer. So the more you learn, the more you know nothing, and the more you try to learn more.
In 2013, this was one of the first craft breweries in the city. Laszlo Raphael is the owner.
Everything in Hong Kong back in that day was imported, and you couldn't find any variety. Right? Every single beer was all industrial lager. For a craft beer drinker, all the other brands, in a way, are all the same. Right? So it's kind of like imagining if you could only eat one type of cuisine.
Laszlo is a big fan of craft beer, but he could never find the higher quality ingredients in the local market. So he decided to start making his own craft beer.
The way that I like to call or describe craft beer is kind of an affordable luxury. The interesting thing about craft beer is that it's usually best when it's freshest, closest to you. The more time the beer travels, the more distance that the beer travels, then the quality and the freshness will inevitably decrease.
Laszlo's brewing journey was inspired by Chinese culture.
As you go into the brewery, you'll have different beers that are based off Chinese mythology, like the Thunder God, the Jade Emperor, Monkey King. Yeah. The Thunder God is a pale ale, and it has very aromatic tropical fruit aromas that come from the New World hops. They were first grown and developed in the US. And versus the old world hops, which is mostly Germany and Europe, which those aromas are more, I would say, mossy, floral, woodsy, whereas these new world hops are more, papaya, passion fruit, pineapple.
Laszlo and his brewers believe that the New World hops produce better beers customized for local drinkers.
The beers that I've enjoyed over the past few years are very light, refreshing, citrusy, kind of just hot weather beer. And I always thought that style of beer is perfect for Hong Kong with such a high humidity, hot temperatures, very sunny days. And so having light, refreshing beers would be better for our local drinkers.
Hong Kong's homegrown beer industry is minimal, but Laszlo says it can be a viable business.
The capacity is around 24,000 liters of beer a month. The brewing industry is a very scalable thing, so it takes you the same amount of time to make 100, 1,000 to 10,000 liters. The processes are the same in principle, but all you need, of course, is higher capacity, higher machinery to be able to do that kind of volume. Right? As long as you have the right flavor and the right recipe in place, and you have a good center of practice, and you can, of course, brew good beer.
In 2007, Hong Kong lowered duties on imported wine and beer by 50%. The next year, all duties on alcohol were removed except for spirits. In 2020, Hong Kong people consumed more than 16 million liters of alcohol. 40% of that was beer.
It was really 2011, 2012, I think it was a change in taxation on beer that really helped. I think there was an influx of Hong Kongers that had studied overseas or lived overseas or worked overseas that came back and looked to where they'd been living in the UK or the US or Australia and looked at the beers that they'd enjoyed there and looked at the beers that they were offered here and thought, there's room to improve here. And some people started importing, some people started producing here. 2010, 11, 12, 13 was really an exciting explosion of craft beer for Hong Kong.
Patrick Gatherer has been working in beer-focused venues for almost 18 years.
And as soon as I turned 18, I started pouring pints and working with beer, so it's something that I've done all through my career in the hospitality industry.
He now manages a pub that opened on Hollywood Road in 1995.
We were very lucky. We caught the wave of craft beer into Hong Kong, and we'd like to think that we were at the forefront of introducing new styles and new service standards. We used to have almost 200 different products, and over the last 2 years, with challenges to business, we've had to reduce our offering just a little bit.
Over the past few years, Patrick has been trying to help out local craft breweries.
In our permanent offering of beers, we have 4 local breweries represented, and as we rotate through guest taps, we try to work with local breweries as much as possible. A lot of them we've worked with from day one. We've launched a number of breweries. The first tap they had,
Patrick is not a brewer, but he greatly respects those who do.
We have guys that make very hot focus, very fruity, very bright and fresh IPAs. We have breweries here that are doing really exciting things with barrel aging and with wild fermentation. There are some extremely talented brewers in Hong Kong that really care about the beer that they make, the way they make it, and the quality that they produce. And I think regionally, Hong Kong is very much the leader.
Luke Yardley is one of Hong Kong's brewers. He's come a long way since his home brewing days.
I'm British. I learned how to brew from quite a young age. When I was a little kid, I used to have shandy, so beer and lemonade mixed together. And so yeah, it's part of how you grow up.
6 years ago, Luke brewed his first batch of beer in his living room on Lamma Island.
My brother came to visit me. He brought some ingredients, and we brewed our first IPA in my apartment. And all of a sudden, my friends were very keen to visit because I had lots of beer. People mentioned to us that there was no craft beer, and it was something that we'd grown up with. So that was when we thought we'd make some more.
From home brewing, Luke started ghost brewing, brewing your beer in someone else's brewery. He didn't have the budget to build his own brewery.
A friend of mine, she very kindly let me start to sell my bottles in her restaurant, and it became super popular. And as tourists came to the beach, they could pick up a fresh local beer, and it did really well. And I managed to, we sold more beer like in a day than I was making my job in a week. So I thought, well, this works really well. So then me, my wife, and my brother, we all quit our jobs and decided to start the brewery.
Fast forward, and Luke's brewery inside an industrial building in Kwai Chung now produces 10,000 to 12,000 liters of beer a month. They're also exporting to Australia, Singapore, Malaysia, and other Southeast Asian countries. Some of the beer goes into bottles and kegs, and some goes into barrels.
This is a temperature-controlled room where we barrel age our beers for up to 2 or even 3 years. These are mainly French oak barrels, and there are lots of different types of barrels. So Beaujolais barrels, Chardonnay barrels, rum, bourbon whiskey. We even have a maple syrup barrel here. You ready? Oh, there we go. We got a busy one. Cheers.
Barrel-aged beers pick up unique characteristics depending on the barrel.
These are from Burgundy, and these give a really lovely sort of red fruit character, quite sort of fresh characteristic from the barrel. But we have some American barrels as well. And American oak is much more punchy and much more strong, kind of the same as what with wine. French oak is a bit more subtle.
Customers enjoy the craft beer flavors as well as the stories that come with them.
This is a sour beer, and it's made with 40 kilos of basil and 800 Thai chilies. So spicy, huge aroma, and it challenges the idea of what beer should taste like. So I made this beer in collaboration with some friends of mine, inspired by Thai cuisine. These guys, they're running away from the police because they're brewing beer. And in Thailand, making beer in small quantities has been illegal. You had to produce a really large volume of beer in order to get a license. And these guys actually worked to have the law changed. So now small production of brew pubs is possible in Thailand. We made this beer to sort of celebrate what they did.
While craft beers are not designed to please the masses, Luke is encouraged by the growing local support over the years.
It's a misnomer to think that craft beer is only for guailos and foreigners. Not at all. Like, we have a really solid following of supporters who are local, and it's not just old men. You get young Cantonese females who enjoy our products as well. In the UK, we've got a long sort of history of beer drinking, and some people might be a little bit more, I'm only an ale drinker, I only drink best bitter, I only drink lager. In Hong Kong, actually, it was kind of amazing how quickly the whole industry has grown. And I think that's part of the fact that people in Hong Kong are very open-minded to trying new and interesting tastes.
When we come back, local brewers call for a toast to taste. Stay with us. Welcome back. No matter where beer is consumed, it has long held a reputation for being the beverage of choice for the working class. A quick refreshment from restaurant coolers or served up at a Thai Pai Dong. But as craft beer takes hold in Hong Kong, there is a gradual shift in the market. Pearl Magazine's Tina Jiang with more on the changing tastes of Hong Kong's drinking culture. At this brewery, a new batch of sour beer is just about ready. This particular batch pays tribute to a special pet.
We're always trying to do something playful. This is my dog, Lhasa, from Malaysia that I rescued.
Scott Powery believes that variety makes his beer unique.
Macros, it's the same. And it's nothing wrong with that. That's very comforting. But I think craft beer, it's different, and I think people like something different. People would have been happy with just, a pale ale, any kind, doesn't matter. Now they want barrel-aged stouts, and they want sours, and they want flavors that are a lot more thought-provocative.
Originally from the United States, Scott used to own this craft brewery.
I've been in Hong Kong for about 6 years now. I originally came to Hong Kong as a project manager and then switched over from that to F&B and building a brewery.
1 year before COVID struck, Scott invested around $50 million to build this brewery in Pho Tan. It can brew up to 18,000 hectoliters of beer per year.
As Hong Kong's biggest craft brewery, it's able to produce at a high rate, high volume, but then the oxygen level in the can is very low, and oxygen is kind of what kills beer. What makes it age faster, go off quicker. So that's one of the biggest, advantages of a place like this.
Local craft breweries usually start out by producing bottled beer, but Scott chose a different starting point.
Canning machines are very expensive, so it's kind of cost prohibitive for new breweries to just right out of the gate start with cans. So usually you always start with bottles, and people will transition to cans.
When the brewery first opened, Scott only contract brewed for other brands. But running a massive brewery is no easy task.
I built the brewery 2019, and then we started brewing with ourselves. There was a lot of difficulties. It was hard, and then eventually we sold it to our good friends.
But that was not the end of the story. When COVID hit and shuttered many businesses, Scott instead started his own brand.
All the brands that we were brewing for brewed a lot less, and so we said, hey, you know what, we want a brand. We want to kind of get into this and put our own mark on it. And so COVID, obviously, it wasn't a good time, but for us, we just said, forget it, let's go for it.
Now, Scott sells his beer to local bars and hotels. He also exports to Japan and Singapore and is very close to a launch in mainland China.
Hey, Scott, what's up?
Got some fresh beer here for you to try.
Thank you very much.
Today, Scott is visiting a friend to share his new product.
I used to come here constantly when I was learning how to home brew at my house to get raw ingredients. And then when I was feeling lazy, I would just come here and buy the beers from around the world that they would sell. It's kind of like one of the icons of Hong Kong. If you wanted to get beers that were really like out of the norm, you could come here and you could get kind of anything.
A lot of people, they started home brewing first when they visited our shop here in Central a few years ago. They took up the hobby and then later on got more and more into it. They built their own breweries and then started a different business entirely. We're very proud of that connection that we have with many local breweries.
Jack Jang manages this bottle shop. He's noticed a growing interest in home brewing.
We're still running our beer making workshops where we host people who want to get into home brewing, to make their own beer from just the raw ingredients and then to see it from start to finish. 8 years ago when we first started this place, there were no craft breweries in Hong Kong. And over time, we can easily name about 10 to 20 different breweries.
Devansh Gupta is in his final year at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. He also wants to be part of the local craft beer scene.
We use unsold, uneaten bread to brew craft beer in Hong Kong. When you're brewing beer, there's a couple of ingredients that go in. So there's the barley, there's the hops, the yeast, and the water. So in our process, we basically replace the barley with the surplus bread that we collect.
In 2019, Devansh and some college friends were looking for ideas to compete in a social innovation challenge on campus.
Coming from India, sustainability and food wastage has been few causes which have been really close to my heart. In Hong Kong, 3,600 tons of food gets wasted every day. So that was definitely something that we wanted to work towards. And after doing a bit of research, we found out that surplus bread is one of the biggest problems. 47% of all the store disposed food is actually bread.
The team decided to help reduce Hong Kong's food waste.
The four of us were actually celebrating the end of our exams and we went to a bar in Lan Kwai Fong. We speaking with the bartender and we figured out that beer is actually made of the same ingredients as bread, which is like barley, wheat, etc. So that is when we decided that, hey, like, is there any possibility to put the two together?
The idea for environmentally friendly beer worked. Devansh and his team won the competition. They now collect surplus bread from local bakeries and brew it in collaborating local breweries.
After we won the competition, we won a bit of prize money and we decided to do a bit of a 20-liter batch. And this is in 2020, and 2 years from then, we've been able to successfully brew over 14,000 liters of beer, which is approximately 55,000 bottles or cans.
Joshua So, who manages a restaurant at a local hotel, is working on a similar project, repurposing leftovers for beer ingredients.
We looked into our operations and we found our in-house bakery had surplus leftover bread nearly every day. We used to deliver some of our surplus bread items to charitable organisations, but during the time of the pandemic, the collection times was a bit hard for them to come and pick up, so we had to just drop it off in landfill sites.
To keep the bread out of the landfills, Joshua decided to make beer. He then found a local brewery willing to take up the challenge.
We collected the surplus bread from our in-house bakery and then we stored it under hygienic and storage. Up until when we met the criteria between 25 to 30 kilos, then we delivered the bread down to the brewery, and for them to blended it down into small pieces, and then they mixed it with their German style of malt in a designated ratio, and they used that to make the process of the beer.
After 8 to 10 weeks, the beer is ready for sale at the hotel.
Our final product is light amber in colour, but it has notes of bread, toast, maltiness in there, and it has a slight kind of bitterness. A lot of people order it again and again. Since our last batch that we made, we fully sold out in the space of 3 months.
Joshua says that local craft beers are gradually overcoming the working class image in the local drinking culture.
As you can see, the F&B landscape, you see more beer halls and beer houses and gastropubs popping up all around Hong Kong, and each of those are selling and catering craft beer products to the guests. Craft beer has a higher alcohol content, from 5% to 8%. Mass-produced beers, they usually hover around 3.5% in alcohol content. So all in all, craft beer is a more superior product.
Kelvin, also known as Uncle Ha, opened a craft beer tap room in 2017.
I started as a home brewer, and I like to drink beers a lot. I think we need more place to introduce craft beers to the market and to the consumers, because there's a lot of flavors, and many flavors are very interesting.
He figures Hong Kong now has 10 to 20 tap rooms, all serving different craft beers.
Some are locals, some are imported from the United States, and we specialize in Northern European. We import about 150 to 180 different flavors every year, changing our tap every 2 to 3 days.
And recently, he's added locally crafted beers to his menu.
The craft beer industry is actually a very small community in Hong Kong. There are around 10 to 20 local breweries, and we all like to share, and we all like to explore new flavors. So we are friends, and we are all beer lovers.
A glass of craft beer at the tap room costs anywhere from $58 to $138, depending on the style and alcohol content.
It's like drinking coffee. You can buy a cup of coffee for under 10, or you can buy a coffee for about $80 to $100. Just like craft beers, you can buy that cheap, or you can enjoy it with a much higher price. Once you know the breweries and the story behind every beer, the ingredients and how they brew it, and the style history, you will get to like it.
That's Pearl Magazine for this week. Join us again, same time next time. Bye for now.